We had to understand, why is it that somebody hates me so much or hates us so much? What are we doing here after all? And by that stage, we began, we were reading a lot. We read the socialist papers and the left papers and the Marxist literature and also the non-Marxist literature. We were reading a lot by the time I was certainly 17, 18. I was reading all sorts of stuff. I'd be in the library at the crack of, as soon as it opened, and I'd be there until it closed. Because there used to be a cafeteria in the library, so I could eat there as well. And I'd wait until friends came in, would buy me some soup and bread and things like that. So I virtually lived in the library. And because I lived surrounded by books, I just read a lot. I had nothing else to do during the day. Didn't have family, didn't have homes, and I just read as much as I could. And I began to understand that the world I lived in was really fundamentally unfair. I began to understand that this country was rich because we were poor. And I also began to understand that we were here because they were there, and I really believed in that.
The activity of the National Front and how they were mobilising and wanting to sort of essentially repatriate the Asian community, all this talk about the Asian community stealing our jobs, stealing our homes, stealing our women, that kind of stuff that was going on. So it was really, in part, I suppose, to defend our homes. They used to come into our sort of area. And in fact, in 1976, the National Front decided to hold a meeting in a school in the heart of where we lived.
And the march, the big anti-fascist march led by sort of the leaders of the time, ended up in the city centre. Now, we lived in Manningham, or lots of us lived in Manningham. We marched to Manningham, broke through police lines, ran, sneaked, because Manningham was ours, and we had to protect it.
That was my first recollection of a riot in Bradford, basically, where police cars were turned over, paint was thrown at them, and being chased by, police on horseback.
It was there that we really started thinking, we've got to get our own house in order.
That was, I suppose, the first real campaign that I can recollect.
We were very confident that we had lots and lots of people with us, and I think that would have been the seeds of where the Asian youth movements began to be formed.
I remember his death, I remember the shock in the community. Yeah, it was a very vivid and a personal experience for me. We went to Dominion Centre, which was a big cinema in those days, and his body was laid out there, and we all went to look at it and marched past it, and the community was very united in its grief, and people were feeling very angry. Young people particularly were. That was a turning point, I think, in my memory, and for a lot of people in South as well, young.
We're all young people. I suppose historically we were all fragmented all over the place, right? And we all had it was almost a magnet pulling us all together.
There were big debates. We should integrate. We said no, there's nothing to integrate into. The British culture that we loved and adored was the culture of those who were fighting against British capitalism, British colonialism, and there were many of those. It's not like today.
Within the AYM, we had, Hindu members, Christian members, Sikh members, Muslim members. We had Gujaratis, we had Punjabis, we had Sri Lankans. The important bit for us was to keep hold of our sense of being humans. We were a generation that was saying no. We were not the generation that was thinking about, well, we've got family back home and we need to look after them and etc., because our parents had done that.
When we found out that the fascists had planned, they were coming down the M1, they were going to come down the M1, they were mobilising across London and they were going to attack Brick Lane. So we'd get a phone call from Scratchwood Services, we think so many people have gone, you know, coach load or whatever. Then we'd get another phone call from another part, because we didn't have mobiles, remember. These were all from public call boxes or cafes or wherever people could do so into a phone. We would then have to phone out to people who engaged in, or we had runners as well. Somebody would run physically, say, look, they're not at the top, they're going to coming down at the bottom. And we did know where the fascists were. We had an idea there were likely to be a couple of hundred. We did have punch-ups as well. You know, we kept them off the streets, and it was really terrible because it was the same day as they'd organised this Rock Against Racism concerts. There were hundreds of people dancing to racism, and it was a ridiculous state of affairs. So ridiculous, I believe they endangered the black community of Brick Lane and did a terrible disservice to the struggle against racism. But it was a harbinger of what was yet to come, because they did that over and over again. You know, in a sense, they were so preoccupied with their own agenda, they forgot to see what area the shit was hitting where.
I think we all probably felt that there was we did need something like similar to Bradford Youth Movement. First of all, there were so many deportations going on. Mostly the people that were actually involved in doing anything with the Asian community were mostly older Asian community workers, but a lot of it was the religious leaders, you know, those kind of things. There was nothing for the young people.
I think it was when I was at the Polytechnic and I was studying fine art, and what happened was that it was late at winter and I was walking through the corridors and I saw a poster about the Bradford 12 and it caught my eye. I stood there, I looked at it, I was brought to tears. It said, until these 12 are free, we'll all forever be imprisoned. I took the poster off and rolled it up and decided that I was going to do whatever I could to support these 12. I realised that what I'd experienced in terms of the racist abuse and racism, the insecurities I experienced, not sense of not belonging, that's something that's shared by a whole group of individuals, and it was something unique to me as a people, as a community, and suddenly that inspired me, and I found collective support and strength in that. As we were focusing around the Bradford 12. We organised a public meeting. You know, suddenly we were taking control of our own lives, our destiny, and then when the attack took place on the restaurant, I think that made us realise that we needed to have a permanent organisation. There was an attack upon a restaurant. The restaurant workers and the owner defended themselves, and the racists went away, came back much more organised and smashed the windows, and a fight took place. They grabbed the till. Quite a few of the restaurant workers got beaten up, and when the police came, and lo and behold, it was the restaurant workers who were arrested, and subsequent meetings took place, and as a result of that, the AYM was born, and we campaigned for the release and for justice.